I am delighted to welcome you to the diploma ceremony for the 2015 graduates of the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. This is a very special ceremony. This class represents the modern iteration of Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. Today, we graduate 160 students in our university program who have experienced our innovative Western Reserve II curriculum. This curriculum is built on the pillars of scholarship, clinical mastery, population health sciences, leadership, and civic professionalism. It has attracted international attention and is designed to educate the physicians of the future, always learning and always focused on the patient. We graduate 7 students from our medical scientist training program. These students also experience the Western Reserve II curriculum to attain their MD degree, but also completed a PhD in one of our basic and translational science disciplines. Our School of Medicine was among the first to develop such a program in 1956, in tandem with the so-called new curriculum at that time, and well before the NIH began to support such programs. Indeed, the highly competitive federal grant that supports our program has been continuously funded for 52 years in testimony to the quality and success of these graduates in becoming physician scientists. Finally, we graduate 31 students from the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine. The college track combines traditional physician preparation with an emphasis on scientific research in a unique 5-year program designed to develop the clinical research physicians of tomorrow. And this year, we had a milestone. The very first graduate of the CCLCM enrolled on our faculty this year. In all programs, this class has attained intellectual mastery of the curriculum. They've also internalized the core values of the profession, putting the patient first. They go forward as our ambassadors to some of the finest residency programs in the country. To our graduates, this ceremony marks the end of your life as a layperson and the beginning of your life as a physician. This long-awaited, richly deserved celebration also confers upon you substantial professional responsibility. I now ask the candidates for the MD degree to stand and turn to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2015 class of the Case Western Reserve School of Medicine. Thank you. Thank you. Now, it should go without saying that you, the class of 2015, did not reach this point alone. The love and support of your families and friends have sustained and nurtured you and will continue to be necessary as you engage in the profession. I now ask the parents, grandparents, spouses, and children of our graduates to stand and be saluted by the class that you helped create. Please be seated, and I will introduce you to some of the distinguished physicians and scientists seated on the podium today. I ask each to stand when I introduce you and remain standing until all have been introduced so the audience can recognize you then. Our students from the Lerner College and the university program came together in the clinical years to enjoy the rich learning experiences provided at our affiliated hospitals, each of which has a distinctive flavor, and each of which has worked to make the clinical lessons of our students both absorbing and exhilarating. Today we have with us Dr. Alfred Connors, Chief Medical Officer and Chief Quality Officer at the Metro Health System and Senior Associate Dean for the Metro Health System, Dr. Murray Altos, Chief of Staff and Senior Associate Dean for the Lewis Stokes Veterans Affairs Medical Center, Dr. Fred Rothstein, President of University Hospitals Case Medical Center, and Dr. Delos Cosgrove, Chief Executive Officer of the Cleveland Clinic. The guiding hands of all of these physicians have made the medical enterprise in Cleveland the spectacular patient-centered environment that you have enjoyed. I thank you all for your support of the School of Medicine. Also with us today is the President of the Academy of Medicine of Cleveland in Northeast Ohio, Dr. Matthew Levy, who represents the welcome extended to the profession, by the profession to its newest members. In the front 2 rows on the stage is a platform party composed of faculty marshals for commencement, our distinguished speaker, and the deans of education and admissions, and the executive dean of the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine. Included as faculty marshals are the society deans who have advised, stimulated, encouraged, and inspired the class with their dedication and enthusiasm. In addition, we welcome our department chairs and administrators who keep the school running and the educational process humming. But at the core of the educational process is the faculty, some of whom are seated behind the platform party and department chairs, and some are on chairs on the floor behind our distinguished emeriti. The faculty are the heart and soul of Case Western Reserve. Thank you all for all that you do for our students, our patients, and one another. Thank you. We're pleased to recognize at this ceremony faculty awards that were presented yesterday. Will the winners please stand to be recognized? The Gender Equity Award went to Drs. Jennifer Hanrahan and Charles Malamud. The Tau Humanism Award to Marissa Horan. They deserve our respect and admiration. In recognition of the importance of the faculty, the Kaiser Permanente Awards for Excellence in Teaching are presented at commencement. These awards are presented by members of the graduating class. I would like to introduce to you Carrie Schlick, who will present the award for preclinical instruction to a faculty member from the university program. Carrie?
It is with great pleasure that I would like to award Dr. Ronald Conlin as a model educator. Dr. Conlin teaches first-year medical students embryology, which was frequently resented for being one of the most conceptually difficult topics within medical education. As such, Dr. Conlin dedicates an incredible amount of time to lecturing within the first year of our curriculum. His lectures, which are centered around simplified illustrations of the embryologic process, are known for bringing clinical relevance to these difficult and abstract topics. My colleagues and I have routinely referenced these enlightening lectures throughout our medical education, spanning from preparing for clinical rotations to board examinations. Outside of the classroom, Dr. Conlin is the chair of CWRU's Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. In this role, Dr. Conlin guides students through planning research projects and ultimately gaining institutional approval to ultimately execute these projects. Dr. Conlin is known for reaching out to students who need assistance with their research, being relentlessly available for questions, and even making personal phone calls to ensure that student questions have clearly delineated answers. It is easy to see that the degree of dedication Dr. Conlin offers to medical education is truly exceptional, and his educational tactics will undoubtedly be emulated by all of us. Therefore, it is with immense gratitude and respect that we present the 2015 Kaiser Permanente Teaching Award to Dr. Ronald Conlin.
I call upon Kunle Elagabidi to present the award for clinical instruction for a college program faculty member.
This year's award for the preclinical instruction at the college program goes to Dr. Joseph Parambil. Dr. Joseph Parambil is a pulmonologist at the Cleveland Clinic, and he is the course director of the superbly organized pulmonology block at the Leonard College of Medicine. He's a dedicated teacher who goes to great lengths to ensure that students understand the very complex concepts of respiratory physiology and pathology. Beyond that, Dr. Parambil is a good friend and mentor to many of us. He knows most of us by first name and last name, and he is always there with an infectious smile and enthusiasm. For that and for all his contributions, we would like to present Dr. Parambil with the Kaiser Award for Preclinical Education.
I call upon Anthony Rizzo, who will tell you about the Kaiser Award-winning faculty member from a clinical department in the college program.
The Kaiser Permanente Award is given for clinical excellence in teaching. And this year, we selected someone who introduced and guided many of us through the topics of women's health. As a course director and preceptor, her unique and enthusiastic style emboldened all of us to work harder for our patients. I am proud to have worked with and to be presenting Dr. Diane Young with this award.
I introduce to you Charles Yu, who will present the Kaiser Permanente Award for 2015 to the winning clinical faculty member in the university program.
All right. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all of us for making it to medical school and making our families very proud. We did it, yes. All right, now the next winner is someone I respect tremendously. His academic achievements will even make Asian parents proud. What I respect more is his humbleness and willingness to help his students. Whether in the classroom or the operating room, he always made teaching his absolute priority. Before we make the first incision, he would take time to diagram anatomical structures on surgical drapes, without contamination, of course, so we could really appreciate each step of the complicated surgery. During residency application season, he tirelessly advised and advocated for each one of us orthopedic surgery applicants, using time in between surgeries, after hours, and even his off days. We simply cannot be here without his selfless dedication. If your life hasn't been touched by him, it will be soon. With that being said, I'm honored to present the Kaiser Teaching Award to my teacher, mentor, and most important of all, my friend, Dr. Nicholas Ang.
We have been privileged at CWRU to have the three educational tracks, the university track, the medical scientist track, and the most recently developed track, the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine. The richness of opportunity is an enormous advantage at our medical school. I now invite Dr. Cosgrove to the podium to offer his thoughts about educating physicians for clinical research in these challenging times. Dr. Cosgrove is a graduate of Williams College, and the University of Virginia School of Medicine. He's recognized internationally as one of our generation's finest and most innovative cardiothoracic surgeons, with more than 30 patents and more than 450 scientific publications to his name. Dr. Cosgrove served as an Air Force surgeon in Vietnam and received the Bronze Star for his work in evacuating more than 20,000 casualties during his tour of duty. He came to the Cleveland Clinic in 1975 and was named chairman of the Department of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery in 1989. Under his leadership, the department attained the #1 ranking in the nation in U.S. News and World Report, a place that it holds to this day. Dr. Cosgrove is a member of the Institute of Medicine, one of the highest honors in American medicine today. Dr. Cosgrove?
Dean Davis, distinguished deans and faculty, graduates, and parents. It is my pleasure to represent the Cleveland Clinic in this milestone in your lives. I congratulate you. You are about to join the noblest and most useful profession on earth. You graduate at a time of momentous change. Medicine is at an inflection point. Healthcare has become a team sport. Doctors, nurses, patients must work together to lower costs, improve outcomes, and produce value. Collaboration begins with communication. We have to listen, reflect, and share information. We must motivate and inspire our patients to become participants in their own care. As a doctor, you will have hundreds of thousands of patients and professional interactions in your life. Each interaction is an opportunity to build or strengthen a relationship. The quality of these relationships will define your career and the satisfaction that you derive from it. Confidence isn't a given. We must earn it as engaged caregivers, sharing the hopes and joys of those we serve, listening to their needs, and alleviating their fears. The class of 2015 will help set the direction for healthcare in the decades to come. You have an opportunity to make healthcare safer, more efficient, and more equitable. I know you will take this opportunity and make the best of it. By the time you have completed your residencies and fellowships, the School of Medicine will have a new home. I'm thrilled to say that it will be part of the new health education campus. So begins a new chapter in the great legacy of which you are now indelibly a part. On behalf of the Cleveland Clinic, I thank the parents and the guardians who are here today. To our graduates, I wish you the best of life and work. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Cosgrove, for those inspiring words. Today, we have a most distinguished medical leader for our keynote speaker, Dr. Nicole Lurie. She is the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, ASPR, at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and a Rear Admiral in the U.S. Public Health Service. As such, she serves as the Secretary's principal advisor on matters related to bioterrorism and other public health emergencies. Her office is the lead agency for federal public health and medical preparedness and response, helping the nation prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. Prior to her current position, she served as Senior Natural Scientist and Paul O'Neill Alcoa Professor of Health Policy at the RAND Corporation. There she directed RAND's public health and preparedness work, as well as RAND's Center for Population Health and Health Disparities. She has previously served in the federal government as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Health in the Health and Human Services, in state government as a medical advisor to the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Health, and in academia as professor in the University of Minnesota Schools of Medicine and Public Health. Dr. Lurie has a long history in the health services research field, primarily in the areas of access to and quality of care, managed care, mental health, prevention, public health infrastructure and preparedness, and health disparities. Dr. Lurie attended college and medical school at the University of Pennsylvania, completed her residency and MS-PH degree at the University of California, Los Angeles, where she was also a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation clinical scholar. She served as senior editor for Health Services Research and has served on editorial boards and as a reviewer for numerous journals. She has served on the council and was the president of the Society for General Internal Medicine and on the board of directors for Academy Health, and has served on multiple other national committees. Dr. Lurie is a recipient of numerous awards, including the Association for Health Services Research Young Investigator Award, the Nellie Westerman Prize for Research and Ethics, the Heroin in Healthcare Award, University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine's Distinguished Alumni Award, and she's a member of the Institute of Medicine. She continues to practice clinical medicine in the healthcare safety net in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Dr. Lurie.
Good morning to you all. And first, a heartfelt congratulations to all of you, your parents, families, friends, mentors, and community, all of whom have doubtless played important roles in helping you get to this point. You are here at such an exciting time. Finally done, about to begin the next chapter. And it is happening at such an amazing time in our nation's history, as you just heard from Dr. Cosgrove, and you know too well, one in which the healthcare system is transforming all around us, and one of which you will play a critical role in shaping. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to give the graduation address at my own medical school, and putting that talk together brought me back to what was for me a really rough time. It was my first month of medical school. I'm sure you remember it all too well, and you, like me, can probably still smell it. It was in the days before the blue plastic. No, not the blue plastic that used to wrap our cadavers in anatomy lab, but the blue plastic that now covers the New York Times that comes to my door every morning. I brought the paper with me to anatomy lab and was sneaking a peek when I heard a big booming voice above me. "Dr. Lurie, please stand up. You will put that newspaper away. Doctors need to focus on their patients and not what is happening in the outside world. I never want to see a newspaper in anatomy lab again." Humiliated, I put the paper under the dissecting table and went back to remember whether it was the nerve, artery, or vein that was on top. Not only for that night, but for nights, months, and years, that voice and the message it conveyed haunted me. And I believe it or not, sometimes it still does. But in that moment, I reached for a more recent memory and the wisdom of a more recent member, a woman named Martha Leapow, who had her own roots here at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine, even further back, before I was born. Marty was a pioneer in polio and in the development of new vaccines. I had met her as a pretty rebellious high school student in Hartford, Connecticut. She'd been working on meningitis vaccine, but it frustrated her that the kids that she saw seizing were more likely to have had lead poisoning than meningitis. It had been the same, she told me, in Cleveland, and it was time to get out of the lab, at least in part, and to do something about it because it was preventable, as was meningitis. So she got me out of going to high school, and I now understand creatively found free labor to work on an issue about which she felt called to act, but for which there was probably no grant support, and she'd still have time that way for her own vaccine research. It was a perfect win-win. I knocked on doors, collected blood and urine samples and paid chips, mapped out lead in neighborhoods, and with those data, Marty got assertive with policymakers and with politicians. I recall watching her as she testified before the state legislature about the dangers of lead in gasoline, and later in front of the US Congress on the effects of lead on children's health, which helped the Clean Air Act become law. Standing in an anatomy lab, I decided that if she could do that, then I not only could read the newspaper, I had to, even if I had to hide it under the dissecting table. I never intended to follow Marty's footsteps into medicine. I went to college with social activism in mind and a goal of addressing urban poverty, which to this day is one of the most powerful determinants of poor health, whether in Cleveland or in Washington, D.C., where I now live and work. It was another mentor who convinced me medicine was a tool for social justice and that I should help to change the healthcare system. To do that, he told me, I needed to go to medical school, whether I liked it or not. It never occurred to me that medical school didn't teach you how to change the healthcare system. And as a young doctor, I experienced constant conflict between being a clinician and an activist, and later between being an activist and a researcher. Now I see that a life in medicine has not only given me the opportunity, but has compelled me to do them all. It was not anatomy lab, but my first patient encounter that made me fall in love with medicine, and I still love it. I was assigned to Mrs. Ross, a wise and deeply philosophical concentration camp survivor. I followed her through her 2.5-year fight with metastatic breast cancer. And as I came to visit her during each admission, we grew to trust one another. She could share her story of survival and her hopes and fears about the world in which her children and grandchildren would grow up. And I could share my fears too, that medicine was changing and that the system would somehow swallow me up and turn me into an evil monster. And without even being conscious of it, I would turn my back on my patients and communities most in need. That I had loans to pay, though for sure not as much as most of yours, but that would make me worry more about making money than I would worry about making a difference. She in turn taught me about the importance of listening and healing, about the human condition, and about the role of medicine in preventing and alleviating human suffering. As in a concentration camp survivor, she taught me about the importance of values. These were gifts that were priceless and transcended the value of any student loan. I was about 7 or 8 years into practice that my path in medicine took a sharp turn. I was in Minneapolis, splitting my time between practice and research, between a university school of public health and a county hospital clinic. I'd spent the last few years helping to create Minnesota Care, which is an early precursor to the Children's Health Insurance programs and, I guess, to the Affordable Care Act. And it was one of those days you probably will learn too well. I was overscheduled between appointments in clinic and appointments in my research world. And to fit it all in truth, I was counting on patients who didn't typically show up, not just show. And figuring the morning would get off to a slow start, yep, I brought my newspaper to clinic. Of all days, that's when Mrs. Bright showed up. She'd missed her last 4 visits, and her blood pressure was wildly out of control. I took a deep breath. She quietly told me how hard it was for her to make it to clinic. Her daughter had recently landed in jail on drug charges, and she was caring for her grandson. He had really bad asthma and no health insurance, and night after night, they sat together in the all-too-familiar waiting room in the children's emergency department. I went through the steps I knew all too well how to do, gave her medicine to bring her blood pressure down, wrote her a prescription, walked her grandson down the hall to sign up for health insurance. That part felt really good. And then right to the pediatric clinic to see a doctor for his asthma. But when I sat down to write my note, I was paralyzed. There was nothing to say. There was nothing I could write in the note to describe exactly what was wrong or what I could do to make her better. They were sick because their community was sick, and they could not get better until their community did. I needed to learn to be a doctor for my community. Simply reading the newspaper was not enough. I needed to be doing something about what I was reading and what I was seeing. So I've devoted much of my career to figuring out how to do this. Like Mrs. Ross taught me about the essence of what it was to be a doctor for my patients, Mrs. Bright and others like her have taught me to be a doctor for my community. They taught me what I'd been too young and too inexperienced to learn from Dr. Lipow, that what I thought were conflicts between a newspaper and a cadaver, between being a clinician, a researcher, and an activist weren't conflicts at all. I needed to find ways to bring them all together, and eventually I did. I also found my way to public service. For the past 6 years, I've had the honor to serve as a doctor not only for my community and for my patients, but for my country. As the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, as you heard, I lead national efforts to get our country to prepare for and respond to all sorts of emergencies, from emerging infectious diseases to man-made and natural disasters. Each week I still go to clinic, and I'm reminded that my patients can only get better if my community does. Each day I'm also reminded that the health of our patients and our communities are linked somehow to the health of our planet. Whether because a sandstorm in the Sahara Desert becomes a hurricane that slams into the Gulf Coast, or because ending a deadly epidemic in West Africa, Ebola, an ocean and a continent away, is not only the right thing to do, but is necessary to protect the health of people here at home. Yes, in my job as Assistant Secretary, I see the great looming threats of our time, and I suppose I could become cynical and pessimistic, but I'm not, because I also see the great looming solutions. I'm increasingly heartened by your generation's drive to innovate and to make a difference, not just observe a changing world, but to shape it. I'm full of hope. You all have the fortune to come of age in an incredible time in medicine. In this country, we're closer to healthcare as a human right than we've ever been before. The Affordable Care Act has expanded healthcare coverage to 13 million people and counting, and it's lowering cost and expanding access. It's transforming much of the way we think about health and the practice of medicine. I'm sure you've all seen the beginnings of it in action, whether it's in just-in-time information on your smartphone, or your electronic health record, or team-based care, or your senior attendings grumbling about billing and that this isn't the way things used to be. And it's going to change even more. New technologies put more information and decision-making directly into the hands of our patients and bring care out of the hospital and back into the communities and people's homes. And they provide countless opportunities for you as doctors. You know, if I look back now at how things have changed over the time you've been in school, there's an awful lot that's happened, even in those past 4 or 5 years. Most of you started school at the time the ACA was passed. It's amazing to see what a difference this short time frame has made. Despite what's going on now, the first year of open enrollment in the Affordable Care Act was pretty rough. I made it a personal goal to help at least 100 people enroll in health insurance. So one of the favorite ways that I did this was that every time I got in the back of a cab, I would ask the cab driver about health insurance. I would take a history. Sometimes my questions were met with other ones, like, what's health insurance? Or disbelief, can I really get that? Then one driver told me he enrolled in the insurance on his smartphone while waiting for a fare at the airport. That led me to bring my own phone so I could go on healthcare.gov and pull up the name and address of a place for in-person assistance near where any driver lived. So I did that repeatedly, day after day after day. This year was completely different. Not a single person asked me what health insurance was. So many people were enrolled, it was like I had nothing to do and I wasn't going to be able to meet my personal goal of another 100 people. More importantly, they told me stories of how their family members had gotten much needed medical care, surgery, treatment for their diabetes, stopped smoking. Many asked me questions about how to use their insurance and where to get care. Some told me they now have doctors that do email, send them text messages, or to whom they can send pictures of a rash so they can get advice but not miss their work. Their blood pressures and glucoses are transmitted automatically, and they'll get a call from a nurse or a case manager, or in some communities, a visit from a community health worker. And you, almost all of you, are at the front lines of this incredible transformation. To some, it seems pretty scary, I know. For me, it represents just tremendous opportunity and tremendous excitement. I've been thrilled to learn about your student-run clinic and that you've been able to incorporate so much of what's important to your patients and your community, including mental health, into the services that you provide there. I hope the students who come after will use it not only to serve patients in need, but to figure out how to make it even better and to innovate in doing it. And I'm sure that in their own ways, just as has been the case for me, the patients that you've seen there have given and taught you at least as much as you've given them. Many people ask me if I would advise my own kids to go into medicine, or knowing what I know now, would I do it all over again? I always respond with a resounding yes, and I also resound that I'm disappointed that my children haven't found a path in medicine. Maybe they still will. But for me, a life in medicine has been such an incomparable gift. I have the gift of daily gratification that comes with knowing I've made a difference in the lives of other human beings. I've had the opportunities to help the systems in which I've practiced do better for our patients, our communities, and the healthcare providers who serve them. And I've had the opportunities to help the communities in which I live get better and healthier too. Yep, I would do it all again. And I'll even confess that I'm pretty envious of you starting out today. Starting a life in medicine when our world is going to benefit from unbelievably staggering advances. You're entering a period of renewal and reform, a time when there are incomparable opportunities and career paths that can take you in directions that you might not have dreamed were possible. Health IT, brain science, the human genome, non-invasive therapies, urban health, global health, law, ethics, you name it. While there are many unknowns and parts of the path ahead are still very uncertain, one thing hasn't changed, and it won't, and that's the human condition. For me, people like Mrs. Ross and Mrs. Bright will always be there, as will their communities, and they will always need a physician who can apply the best knowledge, skill, and judgment to the situation, who will take the time to listen, to care, to advise, and combine the science and the art of medicine. You have the opportunity, and as you heard from Dean Davis, the obligation to mold and shape the health system in which you're about to practice, regardless of your chosen specialty and career path. Run toward that opportunity, not away from change. You have the opportunity and the obligation to break new ground, to ensure those scientific advances are much more rapidly translated into practice at the bedside and in the community and in our nation and world. Run toward that opportunity, not away from change. And above all, you have the opportunity and obligation to alleviate and prevent human suffering. Run toward that opportunity, not away from it. You're all about to work harder than you've ever worked before, if you can believe that that's possible. And that's saying a lot, given how hard you've worked to get here today. As you embark to chase these opportunities and fulfill those obligations, my only advice along the way is to listen to your patients, be open to what they teach you, and if you don't agree with what a big, booming voice is telling you, stand up against it and prove it wrong. Most of all, I hope that every morning you too will all rip off that blue newspaper plastic or open the news app on your iPhone and stay connected and engaged in the world around you. If you do, moments will arise where you as a physician have the chance to act. Moments when you, as a physician, have the opportunity to restore just a little bit humanity in the world. For me, wonderful mentors, admirable patients, writing a mundane chart note opened up a path in public service I had never imagined. In whatever shape it takes, whatever action is compelled, grasp those opportunities with outstretched hands. Run toward them, not away from them. What a gift a life in medicine is. What a wonderful life you have chosen and have ahead of you. I hope that you will use all of your humanity to fulfill its highest calling. A heartfelt congratulations once again to all of you. You did it. Best of luck.
Well, thank you very much. That was a remarkable talk, and I'm not sure you know, but we have a LEPOW Day every year where our students present their research that they have accomplished during their medical school tenure, and Marty comes every year. However, we're going to move it to the summer and not the winter, so Marty can come without the ice and snow. And Dr. Lurie, we do have a memento for you here, but we will mail it to you so that you do not need to take it home. But don't sit down yet, Dr. Lurie. I invite you to move to the diploma table. There, now comes the good part, guys. To help congratulate our graduates. Doctors Connors, Altos, Rothstein, and Cosgrove, I invite you to join us as well to greet the graduates. Faculty marshals, please take your places at this time. I will now introduce you to the faculty who will assist in diploma presentation. Please take your positions as I introduce you. Dr. Patricia Thomas, Vice Dean for Education, who will actually deliver the diplomas. Our society deans, who will assist in hooding our graduates, Dr. Robert Haney, Dr. Kent Smith, Dr. Stephen Riccinati, and Dr. Linda Montgomery. The Executive Dean of the CCLCM, Dr. James Young, who will assist in the hooding. And finally, Dr. Lena Mehta, Associate Dean for Admissions, who will introduce our graduates.
Graduates, please come forward as your name is called. Dr. Paul Adanuga. Dr. Jason Aguirre. Dr. Zain Ahmed. Dr. Marta Omley, hooded by her brother, Dr. Eric Omley. Dr. Matthew Alvin. Dr. Jared Anderson. Dr. Timothy Ashworth. Dr. Philip O. Young. Dr. Lenore Azarov. Dr. Shiyu Sherry Bai. Dr. Nicholas Bash. Dr. Nivedita Basu. Dr. Hannah Barnard. Dr. Kendra Barnes. Dr. Lauren Bean. Dr. Janine Bernardo, hooded by faculty member Dr. Skylar Kalady. Dr. Megan Bedley Wang. Dr. David Banda, hooded by faculty members Dr. Robert Peterson and Dr. Nick Zayats. Dr. Jace Bullard. Dr. Nicholas Chan, hooded by his brother, Dr. Chris Chan. Dr. Jason Chen. Dr. Aurelia Cheng. Dr. Catherine Chang, hooded by her father, Dr. Eugene Chang, and her grandfather, Dr. Chung Chang. Dr. Michael Cho, hooded by his brother, Dr. Daniel Cho. Dr. Rebecca Choda. Dr. Jeffrey Clark, hooded by his father, Dr. Jeffrey Paul Clark. Dr. Andrew Clucky. Dr. Keith Cochran. Dr. Samuel Cohn. Dr. Rebecca Cooper McCann. Dr. Mike Corriveau, hooded by his father, Dr. Michael Corriveau. Dr. Anna Christ, hooded by faculty member, Dr. Michael Dell. Dr. Kristen Cuevas. Dr. Yu Xuan Dang. Dr. Crystal Das, hooded by faculty member Dr. Michael Dell. Dr. Uche Davidson, hooded by faculty member Dr. Joseph Ayanati. Dr. Leah Dickstein. Dr. Trigva Dalber. Dr. Yifei Duan. Dr. Wendy Edlin. Dr. Adekunle Elegbede. Dr. Jesse Elner. Voted by faculty member. Dr. Danielle Aitan, hooded by faculty member Dr. Brian Berkey. Dr. Michelle Faulkner. Dr. Chao Yen Fang. Dr. Jade Fettig, hooded by faculty member Dr. Bud Isaacson. Dr. Michelle Filinovsky. Dr. Sarah Fraley. Dr. Lisa Friedman. Dr. Alexander Galante, hooded by his father, Dr. Gustavo Galante. Dr. Angelica Gandhi, hooded by faculty member Dr. Tommaso Falcone. Dr. Mindy Ganguly. Dr. Erica Giraldi. Dr. Elena Gonzalez. Dr. Lawrence Goodnow, hooded by his mother, Dr. Mary Ellen Kleinhens. Dr. Blairta Green, hooded by her twin sister, Dr. Bunilda Kalai. Dr. Zainab Gul. Dr. Jonathan Gunn. Dr. Jay Han. Dr. Dustin Hang, hooded by faculty member Dr. Alan Markowitz. Dr. Andrea Hannock, hooded by her father-in-law and faculty member Dr. Cliff Harding and by her mother-in-law and faculty member Dr. Mina Chung. Dr. Andrew Harding, hooded by his father and faculty member Dr. Cliff Harding and by his mother and faculty member Dr. Mina Chung. Dr. Jason Hartman. Dr. Stefanis Hariati. Dr. Bradley Hernick. Dr. Cheng Hong. Dr. Lindsay Hugenboom, hooded by faculty member Dr. Rahila Ansari. Dr. Daniel Huck, hooded by faculty member Dr. Mark Mayer. Dr. Karina Yacopetti. Dr. Francis Jablonski. Dr. Rebecca Jameson. Dr. Kelly Gia. Dr. Tiffany Kennison. Dr. Ellen Kim. Dr. Arshneel Kochar. Dr. Marissa Koning. Dr. Yoshito Kosai. Dr. Shaylin Koch. Dr. Thomas Ladas, hooded by faculty member Dr. Dominique Durand. Dr. Ka Lai. Dr. Adam Lamb, hooded by his mentor and faculty member, Dr. Robert Spear. Dr. Madeline LaRue. Dr. Grace Lee. Dr. Min-Ji Lee. Dr. Natalie Sang-Bin Lee. Dr. Sung-Ho Lee. Dr. Pakin Leung. Dr. Tristan Levy, hooded by faculty member Dr. Suber Huang. Dr. Karen Lewicki, hooded by faculty member Dr. Beth McLaughlin. Dr. Brian Lewis. Dr. Ong Lee, hooded by faculty member Dr. Suber Huang. Dr. Julia Liebner, hooded by faculty member Dr. Michael Dell. Dr. Sharon Lin. Dr. David Lingenfelter, hooded by faculty member Dr. Bradley Stetzer. Dr. Hannah Lipschultz, hooded by her father, Dr. Stephen Lipschultz, and by her mother, Dr. Tracy Miller, class of '85. Dr. Amy Liu, hooded by her sister, Dr. Constance Liu, class of 2010, and by her brother, Dr. Eugene Liu, class of 2008. Dr. Aaron Lloyd. Dr. Megan Lockwood. Dr. Daniel London, hooded by his father, Dr. Michael London. Dr. Kevin Liu. Dr. Daniel Lubelski, hooded by faculty member Dr. Thomas Mraz. Dr. Mary Ellen Lyon. Dr. Rohit Madani, hooded by his father, Dr. Shailander Madani, and by his mother, Dr. Mayura Madani. Dr. Christopher Marcelino. Dr. Kaylee McKenna. Dr. Richard McLaughlin. Dr. Anish Mehta, hooded by his brother, Dr. Viraj Mehta, class of 2013. Dr. Caitlin Metzger. Dr. Laura Mintz, hooded by faculty member Dr. Henry Ng. Dr. Kirtishri Mishra. Dr. Joseph Sefi Mueller. Dr. Karen Mueller. Dr. Julia Montine. Dr. Debarshi Mustafi. Dr. Sarah Nagibi. Dr. Larry Napolitano. Dr. Stephanie Napolitano, hooded by her brother, Dr. Jonathan Napolitano. Dr. Lee Nielsen. Dr. Sarah O'Connor, hooded by faculty member Dr. Heather Gornick. Dr. Yuri Ort. Dr. Adeyinka Oyele, hooded by his brother Dr. Asua Obishai. Dr. Parita Patel. Dr. Tracy Paul, hooded by her father, Dr. Jose Paul. Dr. Katie Petro, hooded by her husband, Dr. Clayton Petro. Dr. Nora Pfaff, hooded by faculty member Dr. Michael Dell. Dr. Kwaku Poku. Dr. Natasha Poshelski. Dr. Aisha Punjabi. Dr. Siavash Regani. Dr. Anthony Rizzo, hooded by his father, Dr. Albert Rizzo. Dr. Kayleen Rohr. Dr. Jeremy Rohrlich. Dr. Brian Roller. Dr. Zachary Rubin, hooded by his father, Dr. Ira Rubin. Dr. Saad Safo. Dr. Lee Sasela. Dr. Sapna Satyatharayan. Dr. Mark Sawyer, hooded by faculty member Dr. Michael Dell. Dr. Carrie Schlick, hooded by faculty member Dr. Sharon Stein. Dr. Andrea Sation, hooded by her mother and faculty member, Dr. Cinziana Sation. Dr. Sahil Sekhan. Dr. Timmy Sharma. Dr. Kendrick Shaw. Dr. Dylan Sherry. Dr. Yuri Shindo. Dr. Subarna Shrestha. Dr. Eric Smith. Dr. Andrew Song. Dr. Catherine Stackhouse. Dr. Danielle Stahlbaum. Dr. Mindy Strasser. Dr. Emily Strong. Dr. Connie Strauss. Dr. Kumar Sukhdeo. Dr. Peter Ceresi. Dr. Brian Swenside. Dr. Nicholas Tan, hooded by faculty member Dr. Mina Chung. Dr. Jonathan Tang, hooded by his sister Dr. Stephanie Tang. Dr. Matthew Taylor, hooded by his brother Dr. Christopher Taylor. Dr. Nathan Type. Dr. Mary Rose Timbang, hooded by her father, Dr. Florencio Timbang. Dr. Daniel Urcuyo. Dr. Marianne Waba, hooded by her brothers, Dr. Mark Batar and Dr. Joseph Zaki. Dr. Isha Wali. Dr. Jeremy Wang. Dr. Sarah Wang, hooded by her sister, Dr. Alexandra Wang, class of 2014, and by her grandfather, Dr. Carter Wang, class of 1953. Dr. Mika Watanabe. Dr. Lachelle Weeks. Dr. Marilyn Wickenheiser. Dr. Mia Williams, hooded by faculty member Dr. Kendall Cobb. Dr. Ann Kwok Ian Wong. Dr. Talia Wong. Dr. Grace Wu. Dr. Joshua Wonder. Dr. Tan Lucy Zhu. Dr. George Sippa Yankee, hooded by his brother, Dr. Godfred Yankee, class of 2002, and by his sister-in-law, Dr. Rachel Yankee, class of 2002. Dr. Alexan Yeravanian, hooded by his father, Dr. Bogos Yeravanian. Dr. Kathleen Yip. Dr. Charles Yu. Dr. Roger Yu. Dr. Angela Zhu, hooded by faculty member Dr. Suber Wang. Dr. Cheng Cheng Zhu. Dr. Eileen Zhuang. Dr. Amy Zimmerman. Dr. Samantha Zweibel. Congratulations, graduates.
Now I ask Dr. Stephen Riccinati to lead the recitation of the Hippocratic Oath.
Thank you, Dean Davis. Upon matriculation, the class of 2015 toiled together to write their own oath of medical professionalism, which they then recited at the white coat ceremony. That ceremony marked their formal entrance into the study of medicine. Today, you have earned the right to recite the Hippocratic Oath, which marks your formal entry into the profession of medicine. Will the class of 2015 please stand and turn to page 19? I would like to invite all other physicians in the House to come to their feet and recite the oath in solidarity with the class of 2015. I will get you started. Now being admitted to the profession of medicine, I solemnly pledge to consecrate my life to the service of humanity. I will give respect and gratitude to my deserving teachers. I will practice medicine with conscience and dignity. The health and life of my patient will be my first consideration. I will hold in confidence all that my patient confides in me. I will maintain the honor and noble traditions of the medical profession. I will not permit considerations of race, religion, nationality, sexual orientation, party politics, or social standing to intervene between my duty and my patient. I will maintain the utmost respect for human life. Even under threat, I will not use my knowledge contrary to the laws of humanity. These promises I make freely and upon my honor.
You may be seated. Congratulations. Today, you enter an ancient profession that provides, as exemplified by Dr. Lurie's remarkable career, unparalleled opportunities for service, the chance to change the world, and a very special window into the lives of your patients. You will see from a unique perspective both the depths and the soaring heights of the human spirit. You will take on daunting responsibilities. You will hold human life in your hands. But in time, you will come to welcome this charge, for you have been prepared. And you can make a difference in the world, one life at a time. Some of you will practice medicine, ameliorating suffering and preserving health every day. Some of you will take on the challenges of research and will change the practice of medicine and impact many lives for years to come. Some of you will enter public health and perform great services that affect the health of nations. Whatever path you choose, even as you have conquered vast worlds of learning to arrive here today, there are vast opportunities for discovery and service in front of you. There is still much to learn, and you must now commit yourselves to the endless pursuit of knowledge in the service of your patients. But you must also retain the enthusiasm, hope, and expectancy that you feel now. In our profession, cynicism is as much the enemy as disease. Your professors and colleagues at CASE have helped to shape your values even as we trained your mind. May these values sustain you during unsettled times. You are the ambassadors for Case Western Reserve as you enter those great residencies and later the practices and institutions that you will serve. We have every confidence that you will represent us with honor and integrity. To my newest physician colleagues, the doctors of the class of 2015, I wish you all the best. So we now ask our guests to remain seated until the academic procession, including the graduates, has exited. The bagpipers will lead us up the road to the reception in the Biomedical Research Building. If you're not attending the reception, please proceed directly to your vehicles. If you are unable to walk to the reception, exit via the East Boulevard doors and we will have shuttles to the reception available.